Hi, Anna Karen. My name is Ellen, and I will be correcting these essays for you. I'm very happy to see that you've begun the course and that you started writing essays for your IELTS preparation. Great job. So let's take a look at what you wrote here. The first essay is about schools being more entertaining, so let's see what you said. Education is essential for human beings. Over the years, different techniques and methods have become developed to improve the way of education. Since the last decade, some professionals of this matter advocate enhancing teaching through entertainment. Indeed, it has originated a term called edutainment. However, some teachers do not endorse this idea because they consider education as the only objective, not to entertain. This essay will address both sides using examples to demonstrate points and support arguments. Okay, so Anna Karen, this is lovely. It was really nicely written. I like that you included this term here. It was lovely. There's one problem, though, with this. There's a very specific question that you have been asked here in this essay, and it's really in your best interest if you're aiming for one of those high band scores to answer the question in your introduction. Why? Because if you look at the band descriptors for Task 2 under Task Response, at Band 7 it says presents a clear position throughout the response. Throughout means from the beginning to the end. Okay, so what is your position? Your position is whatever the answer to the question or command that they are asking you is. Okay, so sometimes they say discuss both views and give your opinion. Well, if they tell you to give your opinion, then you really want to do that in your introduction. If they say which do you agree with, then you want to tell us in the introduction which you agree with. Okay, so keep that in mind for further essays that you will write, and start applying that in your next writing. Let's move on here. To begin with, some decades ago, schools were the traditional form of education where teachers used to implement strict and rigid methods. That strategy has been considered child-unfriendly culture. Okay, maybe we could just say it child unfriendly and put a dash here and get rid of culture, because this to me doesn't really create a collocation that feels somewhat familiar. So it seems more appropriate to call a strategy child unfriendly rather than saying the strategy is child unfriendly culture. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So that strategy has been considered child unfriendly, which in turn encouraged some professionals to innovate and seek a different form. This is the movement, no, this is the moment when edutainment surged. That means a mixture of entertainment and education to attract students' attention, particularly children and teenagers. Then, the latter stimulates children's literacy, learning, and communication through enjoyable methods such as games, videos, music, and technological artifacts. Okay, now, careful here. The latter refers to what exactly? Now, if I had to look in the previous sentence to see where you had two nouns together, well, it looks like you're talking about children and teenagers. And so in this case, it sounds like the latter refers to teenagers, but that doesn't make sense. Okay? So you really want to be careful with using this kind of language here. It has to be absolutely clear what the latter refers to. So I would advise you to look up how we use the former and the latter and some kind of tips on how to avoid error or lack of clarity. So, for example, recent research by the British government indicated that children from 5 to 10 years old are, this is the wrong word here, are something to learn a new language while playing and listening to music rather than attending traditional lessons. Thus, edutainment proves to be a method to facilitate the acquisition of knowledge. Okay, fine. So there were some little bumps in this paragraph for sure, primarily in terms of some vocabulary and maybe a little grammar, but on the whole, it was nicely written. It was definitely on topic, and I thought you did well. Let's move on. On the other hand, the old-fashioned method is only focused on education, owing to be the single purpose. All right, this is definitely the wrong word here. You wanted something else here. maybe is only focused on education as the single purpose. It could have just been that simple. You didn't need to do something more complicated than this. Some teachers are not interested in bringing entertainment. I don't know about this expression either, bringing entertainment. How about providing entertainment? Because they believe that there might be disorder in their classrooms. This is a point to bear in mind when having fun, or don't even say having, when fun is involved. Nevertheless, it is important to take the risk of being liberated from traditional norms and to implement new methods, especially with the bunch of technological tools that exist without the ED nowadays. Bunch feels a little informal, so avoid it as a word in IELTS. Instead, with the selection of technological tools, with the variety, with the array, those words would have been better choices here. For instance, in Finland, which is a country with one of the best education systems, the United Nations have conducted, that doesn't make sense. So you're talking about in Finland and then the United Nations. It's a little strange. Why don't we reverse this? For instance, the United Nations conducted a study that compared two different schools in Finland, a country with one of the best education systems. Full stop. One of the schools used the traditional methods and the other focused on entertainment. The literacy and skills that the children acquired were 30% better in the latter school. Therefore, the education system needs to be adapted to the new generations. Okay, so you can see we still have some problems here with some grammar, some sentence structures, and so forth. To conclude, I would not say that education is the only aim in the schools. In fact, it is the fundamental one. However, as time passed, it is always necessary to adapt to the circumstances, and nowadays there are plenty of resources to support educational aims that can be not only useful to educate, but also involve education. I don't know why you're going back and forth between past tense and present tense here. It's rather awkward. So let me try that again, okay? However, as time passes, it is always necessary to adapt to the circumstances. Nowadays, there are plenty of resources to support educational aims that can not only be useful to educate, but also involve entertainment. There we go. Hence, I advocate for edutainment provided teach. I don't understand that. Is the main purpose, and entertainment is used as a tool to turn education to make education more enjoyable. All right, so there's some awkwardness here. On the whole, I think the level of your language is wonderful. It's very high. There's a lot of really advanced, very natural things that you're using, but there are some errors, and I want you to be cautious about those errors, okay? So we do have another essay to look at, so let's do that straight away. Okay, so now let's look at the second essay here in this set, doing an enjoyable activity with a child. Here's what you wrote. Education is one essential part of life, particularly within childhood. Some academics have claimed that the best way to educate children is through entertaining activities in which they can flourish better abilities and develop creativity. Flourish is not the right word here. You want basically a synonym for develop here, where they can... a word is not coming to me right now, but you essentially needed a synonym for develop. But you haven't used develop, so why don't we try using it now? Where they can develop better abilities and creativity. That's all you need to do. Whereas others have suggested that reading is the best practice. This essay will point out both sides, using examples to demonstrate points and support arguments. All right, again, just like in the previous essay, they asked you directly for your opinion. They said, to what extent do you agree? So, do you want to talk about both sides? That's fine. You can. But you do have to tell us which side you support. And if you are going to talk about both sides, then you need to tell us why you're going to talk about both sides. So, in other words, is there something valid about trying to teach children with reading? If there is, then you want to mention that in your introduction. Okay? Let's move on. To begin with, pleasurable activities such as watching a video, singing a song, or playing a game can be more than useful to teach a child whilst they're developing certain skills and creativity. This is largely because not only will children be learning, but also stimulating their brain and acquiring abilities such as critical thinking, taking on challenges, self-control, and problem solving, which in turn cultivate creativity. For example, a group of teachers from the University of Cambridge conducted a research split into 3 stages. Firstly, they applied a test to a group of 25 children in order to assess fundamental skills, self-control, problem solving, and taking on challenges. Secondly, children were taught by means of video games for 3 months. Finally, teachers applied again the same test, and the results were surprisingly satisfactory. I think you needed a colon here, not a comma. 73% of the children improved their score, particularly in problem solving. Therefore, enjoyable activities can be great mechanisms for children to expand their skills and creativity. Okay, fine. Let's move on. On the other hand, reading has been considered an effective method for children, by far, because although they do not know how to read, their parents or teachers can read to them, and as a result, they will develop their imagination, communication, listening, and a better understanding of the world. All right, I don't really understand why you chose to use by far here, so that feels rather inappropriate. Also, I want to mention your use of on the other hand. When we use on the other hand, we have to have used on the one hand here. These two go together. So if you're going to use one, you absolutely have to use the other. If you wanted some sort of expression to show contrast, to show that you're switching sides, to show that you're going in a different direction, then you could have used a number of different expressions. One that you could have used is a simple however, or you could have used in contrast, or you could have used having said that, or that said. Any of those would have done exactly the job that you want it to do. So, why don't we try here in contrast? In contrast, reading has been considered an effective method for children. I don't know why this is here. I already said that. This is because although they do not know how to read, their parents or teachers can read to them, and as a result, they will develop their imagination, communication, listening, and a better understanding of the world. For instance, psychologists have exposed, that's the wrong word here, psychologists have found or have reported that reading a story every day to children increases their imagination threefold, word order here. Thus, reading is a different technique to expand creativity. Okay, so this is your paragraph about reading. Okay, it's fine. I'm glad that you decided to develop a paragraph on reading. I do want to talk about it, but first I want to read your conclusion, and then we'll talk a little bit more about this. To conclude from the examples and arguments given, I strongly believe that there is a vast array of enjoyable activities to teach and develop skills in children. Indeed, reading can be part of them. How about one of them? All children are different. Therefore, it is important to experiment and recognize which ones are the most enjoyable and beneficial for them, because learning does not have to be associated with boredom. Offspring must... All right, here you needed a semicolon or something. Offspring must associate learning with enjoyment. So, what's your conclusion here? I can't really say that I know the answer to the question in the prompt. So, hold on, where is it again? Let me bring it up. So yeah, it says, to what extent do you agree? I don't know. I mean, because you didn't make it clear to us here, and you didn't really make it particularly clear to us here. You basically said that there's lots of different things that help develop skills, and reading is one of those different ways. But that's not what the question asks you. So you really need to be clear with this. If the examiner cannot draw a conclusion based on what you've written, then that's going to lower your task response score. Okay, so keep that in mind. Now, the other thing that I want to point out to you was the length of your paragraphs. You decided to develop both sides of the essay. So in other words, activities that develop skills and creativity, as well as reading. But look at the length of the paragraphs. It really feels like you've gone into a ton of detail here about pleasurable activities. But this, in contrast, is only half the size. So you want to make sure that these paragraphs are a little more balanced so that you're giving the same kind of time and extension of these ideas in both sides of the argument, okay? However, for me, the really important thing here is the fact that I couldn't entirely gauge what the answer to the question in the prompt was, okay? And that is an issue here, all right? So, some things with vocabulary. So I loved a lot of your writing. I thought a lot of it was very natural, very high level, but there were some errors here and there with vocabulary, which took away a little bit the communicative effect in some of the areas. So it wasn't quite as precise as I think it could have been. However, for your first set of essays, I think you're off to a fantastic start. So I want you to feel very good about these essays. I'm really excited to see what you're going to write in your next set. So let's talk about what your next steps are. The first step is to correct these essays based on the suggestions in this video and send those essays back to us. The other thing that I want you to do is also create an error correction list. So write down the mistakes, and next to the mistakes, write down what the correct version is. And that's a list you want to add to with every essay correction you get back from us. The third thing, of course, that you need to do and send to us is your next set of essays, okay? So really try to apply everything you're learning both in the course and in these video corrections. And try to do it all within the next couple of days, the next day or so, really, so that you can keep up your momentum and the progress you're making, okay? So we'll meet back here with that next set of essays. I'm looking forward to it, and good luck to you.